Chapter 3. Socrates. Philosophy entirely reduced to morality, and morality considered as the end of all intellectual activity. The philosophy of Socrates. Of Socrates nothing is known except that he was born at Athens, that he held many public discussions with all and sundry in the streets of Athens, and that he died under the 30 tyrants. Of his ideas we know nothing, because he wrote nothing, and because his disciples were far too intelligent, in consequence of which it is impossible to know if what they said was thought by him, had really been his ideas or theirs. What seems certain is that neither Aristophanes nor the judges at the trial of Socrates were completely deceived in considering him a sophist, for he proceeded from them. It is true he proceeded from them by reaction, because evidently their universal skepticism had terrified him, but nevertheless he was their direct outcome, for like them he was extremely mistrustful of the old vast systems of philosophy, and to those men who pretended to know everything he opposed a phrase which is probably authentic. I know that I know nothing, for, like the sophists, he wished to recall philosophy to earth from heaven, namely from metaphysics to the study of man, and nothing else, for, like the sophists, he confined and limited the field with a kind of severe and imperious modesty, which was none the less contemptuous of the audacious, for, finally, like the sophists, but in this highly analogous to many philosophers preceding the sophists, he had but a very moderate and mitigated respect for the religion of his fellow citizens. According to what we know of Socrates from Xenophon, unquestionably the least imaginative of his disciples, Socrates, like the sophists, reduced philosophy to the study of man, but his great and incomparable originality lay in the fact that whereas the sophists wished man to study himself in order to be happy, Socrates wished him to study himself in order to be moral, honest, and just, without any regard to happiness. For Socrates, everything had to tend towards morality, to contribute to it, and to be subordinated to it as the goal and as the final aim. He applied himself unceasingly, relates Xenophon, to examine and to determine what is good and evil, just and unjust, wise and foolish, brave and cowardly, etc. He incessantly applied himself, relates Aristotle, and therein he was as much a true professor of rhetoric as of morality, thoroughly to define and carefully to specify the meaning of words in order not to be put off with vague terms which are illusions of thought, and in order to discipline his mind rigorously so as to make it an organ for the ascertainment of truth. His method. He had dialectical methods, the art of conferring, as Montaigne called it, more or less happy, which he had probably borrowed from the sophists, that contributed to cause him to be considered one of them, and exercised a wide vogue long after him. He delivered men's minds, as he himself said, that is, he believed, or affected to believe, that the verities are in a latent state in all minds, and that it needed only patience, dexterity, and skillful investigation to bring them to light. Elsewhere, he interrogated in a captious fashion in order to set the interlocutor in contradiction to himself and to make him confess that he had said what he had not thought he had said, agreed to what he had not believed he had agreed to, and he triumphed maliciously over such confusions. In short, he seems to have been a witty and teasing Franklin and to have taught true wisdom by laughing at everyone. Folk never liked to be ridiculed, and no doubt the recollection of these ironies had much to do with the iniquitous judgment which condemned him and which he seems to have challenged up to the last. His influence. His influence was infinite. It is from him that morality became the end itself, the last and supreme end of all philosophy, the reason of philosophy, and, as was observed by Nietzsche, the source of philosophers, who enchants them, who dictates to them beforehand, or who modifies their systems in advance by terrifying them as to what their systems may contain, irreverent towards itself or dangerous in relation to it. From Socrates to Kant and thence onward, morality has been the source of philosophers, and morality is, as it were, the spiritual daughter of Socrates. On the other hand, his influence was terrible for the religion of antiquity because it directed the mind towards the idea that morality is the sole object worthy of knowledge, and that the ancient religions were immoral or of such a dubious morality as to deserve the desertion and scorn of honest men. Christianity fought paganism with the arguments of the disciples of Socrates with Socratic arguments. Modern philosophies and creeds are all impregnated with Socraticism. When it was observed that the sophists form the most important epoch in the history of ancient philosophy, it was because they taught Socrates to seek a philosophy which was entirely human and preoccupied solely with the happiness of man. This led a great mind, and in his track other very great minds, to direct all philosophy, and even all human science, towards the investigation of goodness, goodness being regarded as the condition of happiness.